right, welcome to Watch Symposium. I'm Austin. All right, so at the sports club, I wore the F94W for the first time today. Thanks to this watch, I was able to get out with 2 minutes to spare, so I didn't have to pay any extra money. I don't think I have to worry about the chlorine stains because I don't actually wear it in the pool. I can't wear it in the pool. But anyway, it served me well today. And I want to talk about today the law of diminishing returns. And there was a great question in one of my videos. I'll find it and I'll put it in the link. I'll put it in the description of this video. And you can read it for yourself. I'm going to try to paraphrase. It was basically asking me to talk about the law of diminishing returns in relation to price. And first of all, let's talk about the law of diminishing returns. It's kind of difficult off the top of my head to define it, but it basically means that as you put forth something, what you get back, the returns tend to diminish. In terms of watches, you put forth money and you get back a watch, and the watch makes you happy, and you enjoy wearing the watch, and the experience of owning the watch is pleasurable, and that's what you get back. And I guess the question is, as you increase the amount of money you spend, do you get back more, or does the law of diminishing returns kick in and you don't get really your money's worth? And I've always thought that, for me, the law of diminishing returns really comes into play in terms of quantity, and we'll talk about that. But this viewer wanted me to talk in terms of price. And will you eventually feel like you're getting less as you pay more? I think there's so many things that come into play. And two factors that come into play are what you can afford and what turns you on. So at this point in my life, ideally a good watch that really turns me on is about $5,000, okay? And what I'm interested in, the watches that turn me on, are steel sports pre-ceramic Rolexes. And when I first got into watches a couple years ago, they were going for about $5,000. So I was sort of lucky because and you know, I don't know if me liking those watches dictated that sort of price range, you know, the 4 or 5. If I stretch it a bit, maybe I can justify 6 or 7. I did with the GMT Master 2. I can't go higher than that. I don't want to go higher than that. And I don't know if that 5,000 range was dictated by the watches. I guess it was. I guess it was, because I started liking the Rolex Submariner, and before I even checked prices, I thought, this is what I want. I want a no-date sub, and I was certain that I could get one for $1,000, a beat-up one for $1,000 on the used market. Well, laugh along with me, right? I came to realize that they're minimum 4 times that, and that's what I ended up paying. And maybe I think that's what sort of set that price range in my head, because I couldn't do Rolex if I wasn't willing to pay that. Okay, so I think the horological interest preceded that price range, but the price range hasn't changed for me, and I still feel like 5,000's about the ideal range if I want to buy a watch. And you're kind of getting to where that's not really possible with steel sports Rolexes anymore. Can you get one for 5,000 anymore? I don't think so. You certainly can't get a GMT Master 2. But yeah, let me just kind of go off on a tangent and say I'm into cameras as well, and I've always thought that when you're thinking about buying a piece of camera kit, whether it's a lens or a body, you really shouldn't buy anything that you can't afford to lose, because when you're traveling, things can get stolen, broken, lost, and there are a lot of expensive cameras out there, Leicas, Hasselblads, but whatever you get, I think you should imagine, could I lose it tomorrow and be okay? And I think the same applies to watches. Could you lose it and be okay? And that's why 5,000 seems to be about the limit. Again, I could push a little bit higher than 5, but once you're approaching, I think 8 and above, certainly 10, that's crazy money, and that's when watches start to get too much watch for me. And so that perhaps is when the law of diminishing returns kicks in. I don't know if I would call it that, because for me it's just like, I don't want that sort of responsibility. I don't want that much watch on my wrist. The enjoyment is affected by how expensive the watch is. So I could never really enjoy a Patek. By the way, I'll just go off on another little tangent, and I've never been much of a Patek man, and meaning the Nautiluses are really, I don't like the shape of them, and yeah, I'm not really a Calatrava kind of guy, but man, I saw an awesome one the other day, 5524G. Check that out. Yeah, it doesn't come on a metal bracelet, but that is a fantastic watch. Again, ain't gonna happen. I think they're like 50 grand, but that I could put that into sort of the Grail category. But again, if somebody were to give me that watch, I don't know that I would enjoy it. I would probably, the weight of that value, it just would sort of, yeah, it would stress me out. And so anyway, I'm gonna switch arms here. All right, and so yeah, does the law of diminishing returns come into play when you're talking price? Well, yeah, I would say it does. And again, there's so many factors, like what you can afford and your economic situation, because 5,000 is sort of the range where it's okay. I can kind of justify it, and I feel like I get my money's worth, because 5,000 is an incredible amount of money to pay for a watch. But and if you're talking a Steel Sports Rolex, they're very usable. They're tough, and you can wear them in pretty much all situations. You don't have to worry about rain or water. You can swim in them. And in terms of what you're getting horologically, I think they're actually kind of a good deal. Now, would I feel the same? I mean, as you, okay, so as I increase price, how would I increase price by making it a precious metal version? I think I would, my returns on enjoyment, I think, would be affected. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, I'm confusing myself, and I'm thinking of these different like scenarios and whatnot. I'm thinking like, if you're talking a vintage Red Sea Dweller, and would I get as much enjoyment? Let's say I paid $25,000 for one. Would I get as much enjoyment as I do from my relatively humble no date sub? Probably not. I like using my watches, and when it comes to those vintage pieces, I couldn't use it in the same way. I really couldn't go swimming with it, and so I want to use my Rolexes the way they were intended to be used, and I want that waterproofness to be intact, and I want all that there. So Yeah, I think there is a law of diminishing returns in terms of price. But again, it depends on your economic situation because, you know, 15 years ago, I was living in the Czech Republic with my American girlfriend. And that's a whole nother story. But I was living hand to mouth pretty much. I mean, it was really fun. But it was tough to save any money there. And I wasn't into watches, but I often think if I had gotten into watches, what would I have gotten? Rolex, out of the question. I couldn't have saved $5,000 to save my life, much less to spend on a watch. Oh, and it's the service cost. I mean, there's no way I could maintain the Rolex if something happened to it. I couldn't even afforded, a Steinhardt. I'm thinking if I struggled really hard, maybe a Seiko 5. And I wonder if I would have gone, say, the Tavais route or the Vostok route. I probably would have. I probably would have gone the Vostok route. And it's one thing when you've got a few Rolexes and you get a Vostok in it and it does you wrong. It's another if, you're really needing that Vostok to serve you well. And it's sort of yeah. So anyway, that's a separate thing. But yeah. So anyway, yeah, I think there is. What's the ideal range? Well, I think for me, like I said, it's 5,000. But if I was living in the Czech Republic like I was 15 years ago, yeah, I don't know. I don't know because if I started getting into watches, like I just would have constantly fixated on a Rolex, and that never would have happened. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I probably would have gone Seiko maybe. Yeah, if I could talk to myself 15 years ago and say like, what watch should you get? I'd say, yeah, maybe try to save up enough for a Seiko 5. Yeah, it costs probably twice as much as a Vostok, but I think you're gonna get a better watch. So I'd probably recommend that for myself 15 years ago. But anyway, let's talk law of diminishing returns the way I see. This is where I think it really comes into play, and that's quantity, because when I got my no date sub, it was a great experience. It was a very happy day, and it was sort of the start of a new era of having an awesome watch. And the same could be said of the Explorer 2, although it was a little less. Although it was great to have that second piece. It looked different. It had different functions. All of a sudden, I had a two-piece collection. I could go back and forth. It wasn't quite, as amazing as getting the sub, but it was up there. The GMT Master 2, it was distinctly less, and I think going forward, like a Datejust, I've always talked about getting a steel Datejust. I think the novelty would wear off pretty quickly. I just don't think, that's where the law of diminishing returns really meant something to me in terms of quantity. And I feel it with the Seiko 5s as well, because I had that, I have that one Seiko. Fuck, these kids are driving me nuts, by the way. Okay, I was just deciding if I should yell at him or not. I think I'm not going to. All right, guys. No, I didn't yell at them. They ran me out, which is cool. They're kids. They're having fun, and if my 4-year-old daughter had been among them, I would have thought it was darling. So, anyway, that's what you get when you try to film in a public place. and it's all good. So it's actually 24, almost 24 hours later, 21 hours later. I'm wearing the second Seiko 5 that I got with the Dauphine hands. Can you guys see that? All right, where was I? Yeah, I was actually talking about the Seiko 5 and how I was really happy to get that first Seiko 5, but then when I got this and I got the speed timer, the law of diminishing returns kicked in, and I didn't enjoy them as much. I should have just stayed with that original Seiko 5 that I got. That made me happy. It gave me the Seiko piece. I overdid it, got too many, and my enjoyment diminished. And you know, when I look at the money that I spent on those 3 Seikos, the enjoyment, dollar for dollar, is not as much as it was when I got that first Seiko 5, which was $40. And boy, did I get $40 out of enjoyment out of it, absolutely. So, yeah, I think the law of diminishing returns definitely comes into play with me in terms of quantity, and that's kind of why I'm not going to get another Rolex. In fact, I'm not going to get another nice piece. I realized that for me, a 2-piece collection was the ideal. And that 3rd piece, the GMT Master 2, made me realize that I'm not getting enough back to justify the expense. And wrist time, of course, that's a factor as well. Now, should I sell one of my Rolexes? Yes, probably I should, but I don't know which one I would sell. I probably should sell the Explorer 2, but then I lose that beautiful white dial. I feel like I'm crazy to sell my first Rolex, the Sub, because it's my first Rolex. And then I'm insane to sell the GMT Master 2 box papers, unpolished, minty, probably will go up in the future. So, so I'm kind of content. I'm not a flipper. I'm one of those people that if I were to get a 4th or a 5th Rolex, I probably would keep it. I don't like selling pieces. I think of the loss and what I'm going to miss about the piece. And so that's kind of one of the reasons I don't want to get another Rolex, because it would increase my watch angst. And I would say, I got to sell one of these Rolexes, but I wouldn't be able to. So, so yeah, I'll tell you right now that for me, 2 pieces, that was ideal. If I could go back in time, well, would I buy that GMT Master 2? Yeah. But that was the happiest point in my life, when I had 2 Rolexes, because it was the perfect amount, going back and forth between those 2 slightly different pieces. Let me just jump back to the law of diminishing returns in terms of price. Yeah, it's been 21 hours to kind of think about it. I was a little bit, my thoughts were all over the place in the first part of this video. But considering what I like, which is a steel sports piece, I wouldn't, as the prices increase, and whether I'm going vintage or whether I'm going precious metal, I wouldn't get any more enjoyment out of it. And so I suppose you could call that the law of diminishing returns. In fact, if you're talking precious metal, I think I would feel like I was getting less strength for more money. But of course, it's a very subjective thing, and so a person might say, well, that I want that flashiness and that bling and that precious metal. That's what I'm going for. And so to add 10,000 to what my base is of about 5,000 to get that all gold piece, or that 2-tone piece, for that person, their law of diminishing returns might start at, say, 25. They get the bling of, say, a 2-tone, but they don't maybe perhaps have to spend solid gold watch money. There's other people though that the two-tone wouldn't do it for them. It would make them feel like they were cheaping out, and so really their law of diminishing returns would probably start at, you know, where a gold piece, where they could get a gold piece, and then, you know, so it's a very subjective thing, and maybe this was what the viewer was asking, my sort of subjective viewpoint on that. And so I'll just sort of summarize that. Yeah, I think it's for me, the law of diminishing returns is about 5, 6, 7,000 USD. After that, I don't feel like I'm getting more. I feel like that's sort of the pinnacle of what I look for in a watch. Yeah, so I mean, I think everybody has their when that law kicks in, and you know, it's interesting to imagine if back when I first started collecting Rolexes, if you could have gotten a Rolex for say $2,000 or $1,000, a used Rolex, then that probably would have been the range where I was comfortable with. But again, you know, my dad has a $600 what is it? Frank Weil, is that it? I can't quite remember what it is, but it's a Swiss quartz watch, and Frank Weil, no, Raymond Weil, that's it, and he really thinks it's a great watch, and he really thinks he has something special. So for him, the idea of you know, $4,000 Datejust, that he probably would say, yeah, it's not going to make me happy enough. This $600 watch is perfect, and so where his returns would start to diminish would probably be maybe at the $1,000 mark, whereas you know mine starts at the 8, 9, 10 mark. So it's all relative, and it has to do with your watch preferences and your economic situation and so forth. I'm just trying to think if I would ever go higher than 5 into the 10. I don't think I would. I just don't think I would. I don't think that would ever happen unless my economic situation changed. And if it did, maybe I would be able to justify it. But we're talking, you know, my daughter's awake. I think it's a good time to end the video. Hi, Sophie. All right. Come on over. Come on over. Did you just wake up? Yeah? Were you sleeping?
Sleeping.
Yeah? All right. Well, welcome to the land of the awake people, whatever that is. All right, guys. Take care. See you next time. Bye.